My parents texted, "Party's canceled, don't come." I was already standing at the door, my hand inches from the brass handle, the faint hum of laughter, leaking through the wood like a secret that didn't want to stay hidden. The porch light flickered above me, catching the condensation on a line of untouched glasses, visible through the side window. Inside, someone tapped a spoon against crystal. My mother's voice rose, warm and practiced. "Honestly," she said, followed by soft laughter, "it's so much better without her." The words didn't land all at once. They settled slowly, like dust in my lungs. I didn't knock. My fingers curled into my palm, nails biting skin, as if that small pain could anchor me to something real. I leaned slightly, just enough to see through the narrow gap in the curtain, my father raising a glass, smiling in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in years. And then, a voice behind me, quiet, certain. "Don't, wait, you'll want to see what happens next." I've always been the extra chair at their table, present, but never truly needed. My parents like to say I was independent, the kind of word that sounds like praise until you realize it's just a softer way of saying, "We don't have to try with you." My older brother got the celebrations, the loud pride, the carefully planned dinners. I got forwarded messages and last-minute invitations when they remembered. It wasn't always obvious. That's what made it harder to name. It showed up in smaller ways, my achievements mentioned in passing, my problems met with silence, my absence barely noticed unless it inconvenienced them. Over time, I learned to fill my own space, to clap quietly for myself, to expect nothing so I wouldn't have to feel the drop when it didn't come. Still, I kept showing up, not because I believed things would change, but because some part of me thought consistency might earn me a place I'd never been given. Tonight wasn't supposed to be different. Another family gathering, another polite smile, another effort to belong. But standing outside that door, hearing them celebrate my absence, I realized I hadn't been overlooked. I had been deliberately left out. The voice behind me didn't speak again, but I felt its suggestion settle into me. Wait. So I did. Through the thin gap in the curtain, the room unfolded in fragments. My brother leaned back in his chair, relaxed, his arm draped over it like he owned the space. My mother refilled his glass before he even asked. She used to forget how I took my tea, but she remembered his without looking. Did she reply? Someone asked. An aunt, I think. A small pause, the kind that says more than words. My father exhaled softly. She always does, eventually. Not concern, not curiosity, just certainty, like I was predictable, manageable. Something that would fall back into place no matter how it was pushed aside. A ripple of quiet amusement moved through the table. No one defended me. No one even shifted uncomfortably. My brother smirked, swirling his drink. It's better this way. Less tension. He didn't say my name. He didn't need to. I noticed then. The extra place setting had been removed. Not hidden, not mistaken. Deliberately cleared, as if erasing me was part of the preparation. And somehow, that quiet adjustment said more than anything else. I don't know how long I stood there, watching a version of my life that moved more smoothly without me in it. Long enough for the sting to dull. Long enough for something quieter and sharper to take its place. Inside, my mother was laughing again, leaning toward my brother like he was the center of gravity. My father checked his phone, likely seeing my message sitting there, unread on purpose. They weren't worried I might show up. They were certain I wouldn't. That certainty, that was the real betrayal. I reached for my phone, not to call, not to confront, just to look. There it was, the message. Party's canceled, don't come. Sent late enough that I'd already be on my way. Timed, deliberate, clean. For a second, my hand hovered near the door again. Old instinct, knock, smile, pretend I hadn't heard. Earn my way back into a room that had already decided I didn't belong. But then my brother raised his glass again, and no one noticed the empty space where I should have been. And something in me settled. Not anger, not even hurt, clarity. I lowered my hand, stepped back from the door, and for the first time, I stopped trying to be included. I left without making a sound, the gravel under my shoes quieter than it had ever been. By the time I reached my car, the plan had already begun to take shape, not out of anger, but out of precision. I work in compliance, contracts, signatures, the fine print people trust without reading. It's quiet work, invisible when done right, but it teaches you where control actually lives. Not in arguments, in documents, in timing, in who signs what and when. My parents had always been careless with that kind of detail. They trusted familiarity to cover what attention should have handled. Over the years, I'd been the one they leaned on to just look things over, to fix small oversights, to make things run smoothly without ever being acknowledged for it. I pulled up old emails that night, attachments, agreements I had reviewed, corrected, streamlined. My name wasn't on them, but my fingerprints were everywhere. I knew their accounts, their habits, their deadlines. I knew which things they postponed, which things they signed without question. This wasn't about exposing them, not yet. It was about stepping back, carefully, completely, and letting every system they depended on continue without the one person who had been quietly holding it together. No announcement, no warning, just absence, this time on my terms. I didn't block them. I didn't send a message, I just stopped. The first week passed quietly. A missed call from my mother, followed by a short text. "Can you check something for us?" I saw it, then set my phone down. Not out of spite, just consistency. By the second week, the tone shifted. Another message, then two. My father this time. "There's an issue with the renewal. Call when you can." I imagined the paper sitting on their kitchen counter. The same one I would have reviewed in seconds. The same one they assumed would always be handled. Inside that house, I could almost see it. The small pauses growing longer. My brother asking a question no one could answer. My mother rereading an email, her confidence thinning at the edges. Deadlines don't argue. They don't wait for feelings to settle. They arrive quietly, and then they pass. By the third week, the calls weren't casual anymore. They came late, too late. I never picked up. And somewhere between their certainty and their confusion, something shifted. For the first time, the space I left behind wasn't invisible. It was undeniable. The silence didn't stay contained. It spread. A cousin called first, casual at the start, then careful. "Everything okay?" she asked, like she already knew it wasn't. I kept my answer simple. "I'm just busy." She didn't push, but I could hear the shift. The story inside the family had started to change. By the end of the month, things were slipping in ways they couldn't hide. A delayed payment, a missed deadline. Something small escalated into something official. Then public enough that explanations were needed. My parents weren't used to explaining. They were used to things working. At another gathering, one I wasn't invited to, but heard about anyway, my name came up differently. Not as a complaint, not as a joke, as a gap. "She used to handle that," someone said. Used to. My brother didn't have a quick remark this time. My mother, I was told, went quiet for a moment too long. Reputation isn't just what people say, it's what stops functioning when you're gone. And self-worth, it isn't built by being needed. It's revealed when you realize you were. That's why it matters. Because sometimes the only way people understand your value is when they're forced to live without it. I didn't go back. Not when the call softened. Not when the messages turned careful, threaded with words they'd never used before. "We miss you. Let's talk, it's not the same." For a while I read them. Then I stopped doing even that. Not out of cruelty, but because I no longer needed their version of me to feel complete. The silence I chose had given me something they never had. Space to exist without performing for approval. I rebuilt my routines without them at the center. Quiet mornings, work that was mine, fully credited. Evenings that didn't depend on being remembered. It felt unfamiliar at first, then steady, then right. Maybe one day I'll open the door again. Not the same one I stood behind that night, but a different kind. One with boundaries, with terms that don't erase me to make others comfortable. Or maybe I won't. Either way, the outcome no longer defines me. Because the truth I carry now is simple, and it doesn't need to be spoken out loud. I was never too much. I was just finally done being too little for them.